Okay, right. I was having a conversation with this lady who told me that her husband is one of the best husbands ever. He is good with the kids, he helps at home, mucks in, but there's a large but here. In fact, they've gotten to the place where one of them is leaning out. He's actually threatening to leave the marital home. So I couldn't really compute how could someone be the best husband and yet they are having this kind of challenge. So I did ask her, so what's the problem? What is the problem? And they don't listen to each other. So she has assessed the issue and she has come to a conclusion of what the problem is. And you would think that if that's the case, they would be able to navigate. So she has come to me for some support. And in fact, the husband is clearly against it. He contends that they are mature people, they are educated people, they are even Christians, and they know what to do. They should be able to solve their own problems. But the problem has been going on for quite a long time. And I could sense that it's wearing her out. They use the term mental load. I could sense that eventually there's going to be some kind of crack. And in some instances, she suggests that, in fact, she got to the place where she thinks, well, maybe he should just go so that she could build a life on her own again, and at some point in time she would be able to heal and repair and get to a place where she's happy again. I don't think it's as easy as she's making it out to be, but I've been thinking about it over the weekend and I came to some insights about it. One is that although people talk with each other, particularly couples, the type of discussions they have when it comes to matter relating to their marriage, their emotions, a lot of them don't actually feel safe. But that's a talk for a different video. Most of us, when we begin to discuss matters that are important to us, operate or speak in such a way that we invalidate the other or we argue against. And in fact, Jack Ito, one of the authors that I like reading, suggests that a lot of it boils down to more of a debate where one person seeks to present arguments that will nullify and totally dismiss or demolish the other party's point of view and try to persuade the other party on the validity of their position. And of course, this actually is a recipe for disaster because even in debate, nobody likes to lose. What's the alternative? First, you need to become aware of the dynamics of your interaction, particularly when it comes to discussing matters of relevance in your relationship. What is the dance? Because there is a term used called schemas, that we have well-developed patterns, and the patterns become entrenched and locked in so that you could almost tell by 90 something percent accuracy that if I say this is how he or she is going to respond. And when she responds in that manner, it triggers you. And when you're triggered, your reactivity causes the situation to escalate where there is either a blow up or a shutdown. So what's the solution? What's the solution? A couple of ideas. First of all, you need to become aware of the schema of the dance. I call it a dance of the pattern that happens within the interaction and the path which it leads to, the outcome. Usually the outcome isn't nice. There's a bad taste. And sometimes it's not even the fight itself. It is what happens after the shutdown, the defensiveness, the digs, passive aggressive digs, the silence that is weaponized. All of these creates a toxic atmosphere in which you have to exist because you live in the house with the person. So the fight is one thing, then the after effect is a total different thing that throws us into a loop of negativity and toxic thinking and toxic emotions, which piles on resentment, which churns and evolves into bitterness and sometimes even hate. So the point I want to make is, you can interrupt the dance. You can change the schema intelligently by being aware of what is happening, the things that trigger you, and you need to sense within your body when you're being triggered. When you're being triggered, what do? You can feel your heart pumping faster. Some of you can see the color change or feel the hot flushes in your body. You can sense your fist clenching. Another person suggested that her throat gets tightened. And at that moment, as you feel those symptoms and signs of an upcoming explosion, escalation, you need to de-escalate. You need to find some ways. I'll give you 2 to 3 ways you can do that. One, you need to step back and stop, pause, ask for a timeout so that you can soothe yourself. You can de-escalate yourself. You can breathe. And that's another thing. Breathe. Breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold that for 4, and you continue that cycles. And what that does is it helps the body to drain the hormones that causes you to fight or shut down or become aroused. It brings the blood pressure down. And it is when you're calm that you're able to think more, because when you're flooded, the mind, the brain, the prefrontal cortex is actually shut down. And during this time, you see your spouse not as the lovely, beautiful young woman that you married or the handsome, strong man that you got married to. Your brain begins to see this person as a threat, and your survival mechanisms kick in. So you need to be able to de-escalate, to calm down. And I did hear Monica Hoyt suggest that if you just wash your face with cold water, that's one of the quickest, easiest ways of literally de-escalating a flooded system. Right, so having done that, having paused and you want to reconnect, another thing I suggest is that you begin to validate the other person's point of view. This is very important, most important, because when you think that you're right, you want to persuade the other person of your righteous position. But the other person also think that they're right. And if both of you are having the debate to persuade the other that your position isn't as valid or valuable as you're thinking, my position is equally valuable, or if you begin to poke holes in what the other person is saying, they're not going to be happy. So does that mean that you have to accept what they're saying? No, you don't necessarily have to agree. You don't have to accept, but you approach it from a curious point of view. Why is he thinking that way? What is informing his or her position? And once you begin to understand, you don't need to agree. You need to just understand. One of the ways of understanding, trying to understand a person's position, is what they call reflective listening. And reflective listening is not listening to poke holes on the thesis of the other person, but listening to understand. And so a couple of ways, I have what I call the punctuated conversation, punctuated listening, punctuated interaction with your spouse. And one of the first, there are 3-4 ways of doing this. One of the first ways of doing it is just simply making sure that you're tracking what the person is saying. And that could be done non-verbally. And usually people do that with their friends. Oh, okay. So what did you do next? What happened then? You are becoming curious about what the person is saying. So punctuation, before I borrowed it out of grammar in English. And in English, when you write a piece of text, you need to use punctuation. And the punctuation helps the reader to understand what the writer is, or the author is trying to get across. And similarly, when we use punctuated listening, it helps you to interpret and understand where your spouse is coming from. And sometimes you probably, in your punctuated listening, interrupt the person not to get your point of view across, not to say where they're wrong, right, and correct them, but just simply to understand. You say, okay, hold on, let me see if I understand what you're saying. So you're saying, and you give what you think and understand they're trying to say. And you ask a follow-up question, is that what you're saying? Or did I get it right? And if they say yes, then you could ask the follow-on question, which is there anything else? And maybe if you're having a discussion and you don't want the discussion to become, to unravel in all kinds of direction, is there anything else regarding this issue? You don't want to stockpile, or as they would say, do a kitchen sink that, you bring up everything from year one to pile it on the discussion now. Is there anything concerning the topic that we are now discussing? And then after that, you do what is called some validation. Validation is to accept that the person's feelings, the person's emotions, the person's point of view is equally valid, whether or not you agree with it. Their feelings are their feelings, their emotions are their emotions, their point of view, and you accept that as valid. As another, you may totally disagree, but you accept that as another human being, they do have the right, the human right, to have that point of view. And if you were in their position, you probably would have a similar point of view. You probably might have reacted. Or from their history, if you know that this person was bitten by a dog when they were young and they react to just the sound of a bark, then you could understand their reaction is informed by a bad experience that they have had, and that is valid. And finally, you don't necessarily need to posit any kind of solution. A very powerful question you could ask your spouse, the person with whom you're engaging and interacting, is just simply, what would solve the issue for you? What would make you feel better about this matter? Now, what the person says, and the reason why I want to put that point in here is simply because many people are so caught up with their feelings that they don't think of solutions. But when you ground it in what can I do, what would make it different for you, what would make you better, then it switches the whole dynamics of the conversation into what I would call a solution-oriented. Now, I know something here. I have to just say that sometimes people are having conversations with us, not necessarily because they're seeking solutions. Us men, we do like to be solution-focused. But some people speak or talk because as they talk, they are reasoning out and teasing out ideas in their head about the thing they're talking about. They probably don't need an input from you. Other people, talking is a kind of cathartic experience. A man, and they're bringing something to you in an emotive and emotional way, and you don't know how best to handle it. You could simply directly ask, okay, let me just see how I could help you. Do you want me to hug you? That is to comfort them because they're going through a very painful experience. Do you want me to help you to provide solution? Or do you want me to hear you? Hug you, help you, or hear you? And that will give you a cue of how best to adjust yourself in the conversation. Now, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, I've actually written a book, Finally Heard. I'm going to put the link back down in the description of the bio. And if you really want some more information on how to have solution-focused conversation, helpful conversation, soothing conversation, connecting conversation, please feel free to either check the link below that you can literally make an appointment and schedule a session with me. If I can help you, I'll be happy to do that. Or get a copy of the book where many more of the strategies and skills that I discuss in this video, and you can find them there. All right, take care. Remember, all is not lost. you can change the dynamics. The dynamics can change even if you have built schemas over the years that feel as though it would never change. Change is on the horizon. Talk soon.